Chapter 9 Nightmare Pots. The party barely makes it back to Saltspit before running out of gas plants, and in fact travelled the last day so low on it that Slimy kept bumping into rocks. They had to make will saves twice per day to avoid going mad over Slimy's mental ravages, so they had to use everything at their disposal to get the save/wisdom bonuses, except Vorgok, who kept enraging to cancel off the effects. Since Vorgok began going mad and having his enrage happen at random, I gave him the benefit of being immune to confusion and maddening effects while enraged. They landed about 2 miles northwest of Saltspit. Jack and Vorgok ran back to the town in order to get some assistance. They contacted the hags, and twice cursed Irina herself offered some help, using magic to lighten up Slimy while Valinar created water constantly to rehydrate it. Aboleths are water creatures, and although Slimy's high constitution score and the priest's healing effects had kept him alive so far, he was on the verge of death. The constant sieges and oozing weren't helping either. With Irina's help, they got Slimy to the bunkhouses used to keep the prisoners being used as nightmare pots. Some other hags were working on the 15 prisoners that were currently being used. As the control test subjects showed, prisoners with a planted fear mode would remain functional for about 4 days, time during which they could work at the salt mines. After that, they kept having nightmares during all times of the day, and that's when they were sent to the bunkhouses, until about a week later they died during their sleep, and the hag pried the nightmares out just moments before they passed away. They built an improvised pool using some shovels, leftover wood, and Valinar's create water spells. Now they could focus on carrying out the second part of Valinar's plan, which involved erecting a special facility where the prisoners could be exposed to Slimy's mind-blasting sonic broadcast, in order to feed the nightmares planted by the hags, while at the same time avoiding anyone else from being affected. The hags were informed of the dangers and would have to provide their own means of protection. Still, 2 hags went mad and had to be put down. The price these new, higher quality nightmares would be fetching in the off-world soul markets increased by 3D100, totaling 212% increase, more than making up for the smaller amounts of prisoners available. The business was now secured, money was pouring in, and life was good. The party decided to set up monthly dictatoriate meetings, which involved themselves, Prince Osman, the Emir, Magistrate Balai bin Basir, Prince Osman's cousin, the judge that had the justice system working for them, and twice cursed Irina. Here they presented status reports on the operations, heard news of potential problems, and in general made sure everything was up to current. I told the party they would be stable for the next 2 months and asked if they had anything particular in mind for that period. Since they didn't need to do anything that required direct adventuring, we fast-forwarded 2 months. Chapter 10 The Hag's Haggle. So the 2 months pass by, and in the Directorate meeting of Erastus, the Glarian equivalent of July, twice cursed Irina arrives with a demand. The Hooked Fathom Covenant is requesting an increase in their profit margin due to regular difficulties they have to endure for using the unstable rift as means of transportation. They could perfectly teleport by themselves, but hey, business is business. The party said they would consider it. Hassan and Valinar began discussing how to avoid having to pay the hags more. They were worried both about the decrease in their profit and about the fact that the hags were starting to realize they had enough leverage to start pulling stuff like this. And truth be told, the STC had been getting the bigger part of the deal. Valinar proposed stabilizing the rift and turning it into a permanent portal into the deep ethereal, and so they traveled back to Katapesh to find someone capable of doing such a feat. A lot of talking and money later, they were back in Saltspit with a team of magicians who assured them foolproof portal security. They closed the Saltspit operations early to avoid having people sneaking in, and began working on the rift, which was now completely exposed as the extraction had depleted about 2/3 of the remaining salt. According to the magicians, their infallible interdimensional sustaining pylons would solidify the cosmological nexus of any portal, thus making it permanent so long as the pylons were being kept in place and filled with mercury once per year. Apparently, though, the system wasn't tested on dissected rifts. The rift starts humming as a thick, heavy fog pours out for it, signaling the ethereal discharge to come. Reflex saves, everyone. Hassan, success. Valinar, success. Jack, success. Rakim, success. Vorgok, epic failure. The player behind Vorgok has a long tradition of critical failures in the worst possible moments. In fact, one of the reasons they had him picking up the Animal Fury trait was the fact that he always had critical fumbles and always ended up tossing his weapons into a friend or breaking them up somehow. Forgok was fully exposed to the blast from the Deep Ethereal and immediately began hearing voices. But he was already hearing voices prior to this. Forgok never pays attention to his head. If he did, he would be insane, he often says. So he wasn't really worried. The effects of this exposure would later play a bigger role, but for now he just felt lighter. As the rift kept discharging ethereal fumes from the depths of the Between Worlds, the party began noticing a lot of stuff that previously wasn't there, now was. Ghostly towers, half sunk in the ground, phantasmal creatures frolicking around, semi-transparent vistas. Things were turning quite weird. The event also attracted two other covenants of night hags, which scented the nightmares being brewed and went into a harvesting frenzy, which quickly evolved into an all-out battle between dozens of hags and their servants, literally made out of bad dreams, catching the characters in the middle who used Slimy as a means to turn many of them insane, and thus were able to keep them at bay while support came from the Hooked Fathom Covenant. They lost a lot of prisoners and valuable nightmares during the fight, but the treasures retrieved from the invading hags, mostly souls and dreams, which, while useless to them, were traded off-world through the Emir's contacts and the Dismal Delve later on, made up for some of the expenses. Also, while most of the warring took place in the bunkhouses away from the city, which helped them keep the whole thing quiet, the party had already hired a bunch of Vudrani illusionists to create diversions wherever trouble happened. So the populace, and more importantly the religious leaders that were always trying to find a way to screw with the STC, wouldn't know what was really going on. This time they made it look like a bunch of chimeras from the Brazen Peaks had attacked.